Hello everyone, this is Ashley Tucker. Thank you for joining me today. For today's card, I'm going to be using the Secret Santa stamp set by My Favorite Things. I picked out a whole ton of the images from the stamp set and I put them in my mini Misty tool, and I stamped those with Gina K Amalgam ink onto some Nina Solar White cardstock. I'm going to be coloring in all of these images with my Copic markers. This is a lot of coloring. It did take a decent amount of time, and I had to speed up the video quite a bit here so that the video didn't end up being a 2-hour long video. If you are curious about the colors that I use, I did put my marker caps on the screen so that you can see all of the colors. I've had this stamp set in my stash for a little while now, and I've been meaning to make a card with it, but I just haven't been able to get to it until now. When this stamp set was first released, I knew that I really wanted it. I thought that it was really adorable, and I love everything that Bertie Brown does, so I knew I'd eventually get it, and I did get it pretty quickly after it came out. I especially love the two little kids. They really make me think of when I was a little kid and really excited on Christmas morning. But of course, I still really get excited for Christmas morning, even though I'm not a kid anymore. When I was coloring the two little kids, I kind of had myself and my little brother in mind. I have 3 little brothers actually, but I was thinking about the one that is closest in age to me. I thought he kind of looked like this little boy, so I kind of colored him to look like my brother. And then I colored the little girl to kind of look like I looked when I was that age. I actually remember I had a night dress that kind of looked like that one, so I colored that to look like that. And actually, this is a fun fact about me. My hair was a lot more blonde when I was younger. It's slowly gotten darker as I've gotten older, so that's what color my hair used to be. When I first colored this tree, I colored it really yellow-green. I used a lot of yellow greens, and then I threw in a blue-green for the really dark shadows. But you'll see later in the video that I actually kind of changed the way that I did the tree. I didn't really like the way that it was really yellow-green. I thought that I wanted it to be a little bit more of that blue-green because that's what color I think of when I think of pine trees. I think that you can totally make really yellow-green trees and that's just fine, but I think that that's a little bit more cartoony, and for this particular card I wasn't going for that look. Of course, it is very cartoony because these are drawings and they are not realistic, but I really wanted the tree to be more of a true to real life color, so that's why I changed it. But like I said, I didn't realize that I wanted to change it until later in the video, and you'll see when I do that. For the ornaments on the tree, I debated whether or not to do a bunch of different colors, but after thinking about it for a little bit, I decided to keep them all red. I used the same exact colors that I used for the ornaments to color in that little stocking that the girl is holding, and then I also used them to color in Santa's suit. I still only own about 40 Copic markers. I haven't bought any in quite a while, but I find that with the 40 that I have, I can usually make things work. Even if I'm missing an in-between color, I can touch the tip of one marker to the other to try and blend them together a little bit, and that works pretty well. Okay, so this is where I start changing that tree from the yellow-green to more of a blue-green. And I actually only own these 2 blue-green markers that are on the screen here, but I was able to make them work. Now, the lighter of those 2 colors was actually really, really light, and it wasn't showing up too well. I really needed a lighter color to do my highlights, but that BG11 just wasn't cutting it. So instead, I brought in that G14 color, and when I mixed that color and blended it with the BG49, it gave me a really nice color for the highlights. Next, I started to color in all of the presents, and I really wanted these to be a lot of different colors. I wanted to bring in more than just your typical red and green Christmas colors. Of course, I did still use some red in the presents. I kind of kept red as a theme in this card. I used it all throughout the images. You'll notice that for all of these presents, I only used 2 colors for each of the bows and 2 colors for each of the presents. And in order to get some in-between colors, I did touch the tip of the lighter color marker to the tip of the darker color marker so that I could get a better blend. This is especially important with the blue-green colors that I used because the darker of the two is really dark and the lighter one is really light, so they're a lot harder to blend together. Once the coloring on the presents was all done, I decided I wanted to add some details to a couple of them. So for the present that's in a bag, I decided to add some polka dots. And then for the red present, I thought I'd add some stripes. But those stripes actually didn't show up very well, and I didn't have a dark enough red marker to make them show up. So they didn't work very well, but I really liked the polka dots on the bag. Next, I took out my gray markers and I added a little bit of shading to everything that's white. Finally, the last thing that I did was I added a little bit of blush to all of the characters' cheeks. That coloring took a long time, but it's really nice to just sit and color sometimes. Alright, so now I have 2 pieces of A2 size cardstock. On one of them, I have a square window cut out of the top, and I'm actually gluing down a piece of acetate to that window to turn it into a shaker card. On the other, I have a piece of Gina K cherry red cardstock glued to the top, and that's going to be the background for my shaker. I used some doubled up foam tape to create my shaker area, and then I placed a whole bunch of red sequins into that area. A few months ago, I made a shaker card for Halloween where I did black sequins on a black background. I really liked how that came out. I really liked the look of it, and I've been wanting to try it with other colors. And I especially thought it would be nice to do a Christmas card with red on red, so that's why I decided to do this. So I glued my shaker panel onto an A2 size card base, and then I started adding all of those images. You'll see that these images have all been cut out. Thank goodness I have a scan and cut because it was a lot of images and my hands would have really hurt if I had to fussy cut all of these out. Before I started gluing all of these presents down, I did play with them for a little while in order to figure out a layout. I didn't want to just start gluing them down without having an idea of what I was going to do. So for the Christmas tree, I glued that down with my ATG gun because I just kind of prefer the ATG gun for adhering things onto acetate. But for the presents, I decided to use my Gina K Connect glue, and that's just because I find it a little bit easier to use, especially with smaller images, and also it gives you a little bit of play time to move the images a little bit after you place them. When you use the ATG gun, you have to be really careful because you definitely don't really have any playtime to move images around after you've placed them. Once I glued down all of those images, I realized that I wanted a few more of the tiny little stockings, so I stamped those really quick and colored them in, and then I glued them down to kind of fill in the areas a little bit better. I took out my white gel pen and I added some highlights and details to all of these images. I really wanted there to be a difference between the 2 red stockings, so in order to do that, I added some polka dots to one of them. And then after I added those polka dots, I really liked them, so I added them to the blue stocking as well. Now, one thing that my Christmas tree really needed was some lights. So I used my white gel pen and I added a ton of really tiny dots all around my tree. And these dots kind of represent the strings of lights around the tree. When I started thinking about a sentiment for this card, I realized that I really didn't want to put a sentiment on the front of the card. I thought the front was really good the way that it was, so I decided to add a sentiment to the inside of the card instead. Now, this card cannot be put into my Misty tool at this point because of all the dimension on the front of it. It would just not fit in there, so I had to use a block to add the sentiment. If you've been following me for a while, you might realize that this block is new. I only had one block, but when my mother-in-law heard that I only had one block, she went through her stash and gave me a couple of her blocks, which was really nice of her. So when I was doing the front of the card, you might have wondered where these two little kids went, and I just couldn't fit them on the front of the card. There was just too much going on, so I decided to put these on the inside. After gluing these down, I wanted to add some highlights, just like the outside of the card. I wanted them to really go with the coloring on the outside of the card. So I used my white gel pen and I added a few highlights. After I decorated the inside of this card, I thought, why not go all out and decorate the back of the card too? So I grabbed the little plate of cookies image from the Secret Santa stamp set, and I stamped that on the bottom of the back of the card. And then I took my Copic multi-liner and I added some little heat waves above it so that it looks like they're nice and hot. I didn't want to color these in with my Copic markers in case the markers bled through the paper, because I didn't want any of the markers to show on the inside of the card. So instead, I grabbed a couple of my Arteza markers and did some really simple coloring. For the cookies, I used the colors Ginger and Tawny, and for the plate, I used some Dolphin Gray. After that, this card is all done, and here's a closer look at the finished card, and I just love the way this one came out. I love the red on red shaker. I'm really happy with this one. Thank you for watching today. I hope you really enjoyed this card using the Secret Santa stamp set from My Favorite Things. All of the supplies that I used for today's card can be found in the description down below. If you enjoyed watching and you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, I would encourage you to hit that subscribe button so that you can see all of my future videos. I'm going to be back with a new video on Friday. Again, thank you for watching. I appreciate all of you, and I hope you have a good day today.